we're going to do our brief definition of what it means to be highly sensitive, or maybe even HSQ. I think you're starting us off, right, Brian?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure Elaine and I could spend hours talking about this, and we probably have, but there is an acronym that covers sort of the characteristics of the trait of high sensitivity. It's an acronym known as DOES, D-O-E-S. The first letter, D, stands for depth of processing. So it's probably the most important characteristic of the trait. HSPs love to think more thoroughly. We process information really deeply. And I like to think it's not that your spidey senses are better than others. It's really about how the information is processed in the brain. A lovely way that I like to explain it to clients is the non-highly sensitive person would hold this water bottle with 5 fingers and interpret it with 5 fingers. I feel like HSPs would interpret as if we're holding it with 50. That's how much information we're taking in. Means we put a lot of thought into decisions. Maybe you've been called an overthinker. No, that's definitely something I've been called. But it generally means that we're not impulsive by nature. So I love that aspect of the trait. I'm thinking a lot. A lot of the time it hurts to think so much, but I'm usually glad with the results.
Brian and I were talking as we were preparing for this about how, it seems like all that thinking impacts how we're queer in the world too, because we're just so thoughtful about it. And I don't know, here's a study. If anybody's out there is working on their PhD or in a position to do science, I would like to know what is the correlation between sensitivity and figuring out that you're LGBTQ plus? Are you more likely to figure it out? Are you more likely to figure it out earlier? Okay, so that's just my digression, sorry. I'm on O, overstimulation, the psychological term being overarousal. Probably most of you know that. And it is really the only negative aspect of being highly sensitive. And it basically means that we have a biological, physiological overwhelm that can happen to us much more easily, and maybe 100 times more than people who don't have this trait. Our brain's more reactive, and we get overstimulated by all the stuff that we're taking in, all the things we're thinking. And it's absolutely critical that we find our optimal level of arousal and spend as much time there as we can. And I think in our conversations also, Brian and I have talked a little bit about how a lot of the ways that you find your people when you're queer are in social events. And I was just looking over our notes, and Brian had written in there pride, like going to pride events. And I have to admit, like, I take at least every other year off I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's a big pride event. And I often take a year off. At the last minute, I decided I can't do it. Oh, maybe we'll just go to the Dyke March. And they'll be like, nah. So, but that's also my age, but it doesn't matter how old you are. You get over, it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. And remember, 30% of us are extroverts. It still is overstimulating. So I think it's especially hard to find your people because of that. And then I'm also doing E, emotional reactivity and empathy. And some people have started saying, oh, it's emotional responsiveness and higher emotional responses. And that is true. And even Elaine Aron says that. But the fact of the matter is we have a more reactive brain, especially with regard to emotional content. And so we are going to react to things with stronger emotions. The good news about E, positive emotions and positive content create an even stronger reaction in us than the negative. And sometimes I feel like when we are inflicted with microaggressions, for example, for whatever reason, that we get this like negative bias, and we feel like we're only strongly emotionally reactive to the negative things because life can be hard. I mean, and humans kind of tend to have a negative bias. So I just want everybody to remember that we are stronger with regard to empathy and positive emotions. Just have to pay a little more attention to them. And sometimes that's hard.
Thank you. I had to take that last one in. I feel like everything that we're talking about, I'm really taking it deeply. So I'm like really feeling and connecting with everything. And it's not an accident to me. S in the acronym is sensitivity to subtleties and or sensory stimuli. So HSPs notice subtle details that others miss much of the time. We're very responsive to our environment. We're often very perceptive and attuned to other people's emotions and behaviors. We're also aware of a lot of nonverbal cues or small changes in the environment. We also might be aware of subtleties to more sensory things like itchy clothes, strong smells, loud noises, crowded environments. I was thinking about this conversation today, and in thinking about sensitivity to subtleties, I wonder, as queer folks, what we're more aware of in our environments because of the combination of those two identities. Maybe that's
Mhm.
something we can discuss later, because I'm really fascinated what people might say.
I love that.